In the past couple of days, Falcons owner Arthur Blank spoke with media, and he shared some thoughts on his reasoning for deciding to draft Michael Penix in this past draft after signing Kirk Cousins to a massive deal. I think many people were surprised that the Falcons decided to draft a quarterback when you had already decided to bring in Kirk Cousins. But he gave a little bit more detail into his thought process and his reasoning for drafting Michael Penix. And this was an article written by Josh Kendall of The Athletic. And here's the first quote. "We have seen that movie where we didn't have a franchise quarterback, and we didn't want to repeat that again," Blank said Tuesday after visiting Atlanta's training camp practice. "I certainly didn't." Then he says, "I think Cousins was surprised, as many people were, and frankly, we were, that Penix was available at number 8. Our plan was not to pick a quarterback at number 8, but the grades our coaching staff had on Penix and him being available at number 8, it turned out that that's what happened." And so while I know many people were surprised that the Falcons decided to draft Penix, many thought they should have taken someone who could come in their rookie year and be a valuable piece of this team to, support Kirk Cousins and give this team a better chance at making a playoff push and making a push for a Super Bowl. I understand the reasoning of not wanting to have to deal with a time where you're uncertain at the quarterback position, because there's so many teams in the NFL who, you have one quarterback who's doing okay for you, winning games. That guy retires, moves on, gets injured, whatever it is. And then that team is stuck in, no man's land, and they're trying time and time and again to hit on a quarterback. And so I fully understand, and honestly, I think it's a wise move to bring in Michael Penix, because while Kirk Cousins, I assume he still has a few good years left in him, at the same time, I think the Falcons sort of hedged their bet on Kirk Cousins, because if he doesn't come back the same guy after his injury, then at least you have another guy in the building. If there is another injury, you have another guy in the building that you think you may be able to trust. And so I honestly don't think it was a bad move by the Falcons. I just think it's a difference in having a long-term vision versus a short-term vision and really preparing for the future. And then we have here another quote, "But I know age does kind of creep up. I can speak for myself personally on that," he said. "We also know that there will be a point where we will need a transition, and we want to do that smoothly. I'm very sensitive on behalf of our fan base on not having a period of time post-Kirk Cousins to have a gap again between having that kind of franchise quarterback and being in the spin cycle and not being able to get out. Thank heavens we don't always listen to the league," Blank said. "And thank heavens we don't always listen to the media. And thank heavens we don't always do what everyone else thinks we ought to be doing. We are actually very independent thinkers." So clearly Blank has probably seen the thoughts that many people shared on draft day, many being surprised that they decided to go with Penix, many thinking it was a bad move. I, for one, fully understand it, and I don't think it was a bad move. And then final quote here, "At the moment, our fans might have wanted a different player, but at some point down the road, they will want to know that we can have a smooth transition at that very important position," he said. "When Green Bay drafted Jordan Love, it was a lot of the same discussion. They made a decision at that time to think about their future, not knowing what was going to happen with Aaron Rodgers, who is getting a little bit older as well. Today, you couldn't find a person in Green Bay who is not going to click their heels and jump for joy that they have Jordan Love." And so I've seen people after the Penix draft pick say that this is a different situation than the Packers when they drafted Jordan Love. And sure, it's a little different. The fact that you didn't just bring in Aaron Rodgers to your team. The Falcons just signed Kirk Cousins to a massive deal. And so I think that's why people maybe were a little bit more confused at the decision when you just made a big decision in bringing back Kirk Cousins. But at the same time, I would say most media was shocked back in 2020 when the Packers went with Jordan Love. And, for the next couple of seasons, there were lots of Packers fans who were saying, if we would have used that Jordan Love pick on a receiver, maybe the Packers would have gotten over some of those NFC championship hurdles when they weren't able to make things happen. And, maybe that's the case. If you have one more guy, it changes your team. But at the same time, you can't know that for a fact. And the Packers have always been a team to be willing to make decisions when many people may not be willing to make the same kind of decisions, that more so thinking on the long term, recognizing that the quarterback is the most important position in football. And if you don't have a quarterback, then your team is going to struggle. And I think the Falcons, they've experienced, not having a top tier quarterback. And so they were willing to, make a pick that is more in their long-term best interests. And I honestly think that I don't see why more teams don't do this. I get that in the short term, if you drafted someone else, your team is probably better right away. But at the same time, it sounds like Arthur Blank doesn't want to be stuck after Kirk Cousins leaves, whether that's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, however it is. He doesn't want to be stuck again having to find another quarterback. And so I think it's a wise move to have a guy develop behind Kirk Cousins. He can learn, he can grow. And if you look at Kirk Cousins and his contract, depending on how he's playing and all that kind of stuff, it'll obviously factor into if Michael Penix plays, when he plays. But looking at the first 2 years of Kirk Cousins' contract, his cap hit this year is about $25 million. Next year it's $40 million. After that it's $57 million. And I think that if after 2 years the Falcons decide that, let's say Kirk Cousins, they don't think he's playing at that top tier level anymore, they want to move to Penix, they think he gives them a better chance, you can release Kirk Cousins after the 2025 season, and that'll only be a dead cap hit of $25 million. Obviously, that's not cheap, but that's very doable if you, at that point, want to move on from Cousins. And after 3 years, it could make even more sense because at that point, after the 2026 season, if you move on from Cousins, you'll have a $12.5 million dead cap hit, which is not bad at all. And so I'd be curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Did you like the decision to draft Penix, or did you think it was, foolish considering they had just signed Kirk Cousins? I'm honestly think that it was a good move, a good decision. And now, obviously, it's going to come down to how good is Michael Penix. If he isn't a good NFL quarterback, I think people will always think that was a really bad move. And obviously, in hindsight, it's easier to say those kinds of things. But at the same time, I think the process to draft a quarterback when you have an aging quarterback is not a bad decision. The Packers did it, and now they are very, very happy that they decided to pick Jordan Love, even though Aaron Rodgers was playing at a really high level still at the time. So if you want more NFL content, feel free to subscribe down below. You can also follow me on Twitter, LukeBeller3, and I'll see you guys next time.